Well, hello readers by eyes and by ears. This is Mari Chan and welcome back to my channel. I hope you all are having a good morning thus far, or if you're well into the night, I hope you had an excellent day. I am feeling a bit better, which is great. I'm still not 100%, but I had a conversation with my body before I went to bed last night, and I was like, hey, you gotta get it together. You're gonna be well, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. We're not gonna have all of this and that anymore. And it looks like my body decided to listen to me. So next time you get a cold or something like that, just tell your body, hey, get it together, bruh. Anyway, I still have the sniffles and coughing and mucus and all that disgusting stuff. And I was talking to my husband this morning, and it sounds like there is a new strand of COVID going around. So it looks like that might be what it is. A strand that is, undetectable by all of the COVID tests that you can buy in the store. So if that's what it is, well, I guess that explains a lot. So anyway, I went from never getting COVID, even when being in contact with people with COVID, to suddenly now I got COVID earlier this year and possibly again later this year. Enough about that. We're going to get started. Today, yes, I am only reading one chapter again. Like I said, we're just taking it easy this week. I'm taking it easy this week. And yeah, let's get started. Oh, I also meant to say that I have my window open so I can get some fresh air, which is vital, and it's very helpful for me as far as like breathing is concerned. So I'm apologizing in advance if a car passes by and you guys can hear it and I don't like cut off the recorder in time or whatever. It's generally not a loud road or anything, so hopefully that's not too distracting. I'm recording this morning, which means I won't really have time to edit out the sounds and all of that stuff. I'm just trying to get the chapter out to you guys. So yeah, okay, now let's get started for real this time. Chapter 2, The Revolution of the Clones. From afar came the electronic sounds of a robot patrol among the waves. Damn, Aka muttered. Using the strength of all his limbs, he pulled the man out of the sleeping chamber, then hauled him onto his back and ran toward higher ground. 400 yards away, 2 Coast Guard ships parted the waters as they rushed toward the shore. His heart thundering in his chest, Aka clutched the man tight as he clambered up the rocks while the sound of sirens screamed in the distance. He pulled out a remote from his shirt pocket, then a huge boom came from inside the cave. Kay staggered forward and crashed about, leaving a trail of smoke behind it as it charged outside. With one arm, Aka hugged the man, and with the other, he grabbed Kay's metal arm. Kay slammed against the rocks a few times and lost a few stray pieces, which rolled away and fell with a series of clinks into the sea below. Darkness swam across Aka's vision, and realizing he had no better options, he clasped the man to his chest and rushed behind Kay back into the cave. After several minutes, Aka finally recovered. He patted that man's face to no avail. He was still unconscious. Kay took several large steps back to its original position and once again sank into silence. Climbing out of the cave, Aka peeked down, only to see the patrol robots taking the sleeping chamber away. Now there was nothing left of it, only a man whom he had picked up and brought with him. A human. Aka looked at that man's soundly sleeping face and suddenly felt at a loss. What use was a human? If the chamber had been empty, he could have at least sourced some materials from it, but throwing this man back into the sea, even if he was useless, was not something that Aka could bring himself to do. Well, things were how they were. Aka stood and walked to Kay's side, then returned to adjusting its navigation system. The chip that he had stolen off the clone's body must indeed have been broken, because when Aka turned on the sound system, he heard nothing but static. until without warning, a sound came from Kay's voice box. System failure. Ah! Akka jumped in surprise. He never expected Kay to speak. What was going on? He hadn't installed artificial intelligence software on the mecha. Kay once again fell silent, its two icy eyes staring fixedly at Akka, filling him with suspicion. He opened up the circuit board on Kay's abdomen and swapped the voice controls. Kay spoke again. The patricide campaign must be... Akka startled once more, but this time he found the reason. The navigation chip was producing the noise. Some strange messages had been inserted into the navigation device. Akka wired up the rest of the circuitry and began to broadcast the navigation system's narration again, only to hear a series of words that nearly sent his soul flying out of his body. Attention all members of the rebellion. The turning point of the revolution is soon to be upon us. And the password is, the patricide campaign will mark the last day of our oppression, and a new era will arrive. On November 27, at 12 o'clock in the morning, when the time for humans to switch shifts comes, we will break through their defenses and exterminate any robots that try to suppress us with force. When every district loses power, all members of the rebellion are to sneak into the central reactor chamber. The vanguard will then force a failure in the defensive system. Our goal is to destroy the central energy storage with explosions and thereby annihilate Father. I wish everyone success. Akka was so stunned that he couldn't speak. All he could do was stand there and stare at Kay. November 27. And today was November 25. Was this a joke? Akka couldn't believe it, but the navigation chip had been taken from the clone's own body. He didn't know that Akka had stolen it, so he couldn't have planted this chip of narration beforehand. In other words, in 48 hours at most, the clones would ally with the humans and start to riot with the goal of taking down the central computer. Akka couldn't help but think about the impossibility of everything that had happened today. He was so lost in his thoughts that he didn't notice that the man he had rescued from the beach was awake. When Akka turned suddenly, he rammed right into that man's chest. He let out a loud cry, and he took a fist to the face and landed heavily on the floor. The man's eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared coldly at Akka. Under the glow of Kay's light, they watched each other in silence for almost half a minute. Akka's brain filled with a buzzing noise, and he felt as if it was ticking down to an explosion. As the silence dragged on between them, Akka struggled to break free of the sensation. "What are you trying to do?" the man asked icily. Akka's eyes filled with tears of rage, and he sputtered and coughed as he gulped down air. "I saved you!" he shouted. "Is this how you treat the person who saved your life?" "Oh." The man looked Akka up and down, assessing him. Akka looked back, and suddenly felt a little bewildered. The man in front of him was about 20 years of age, with bronzed skin and a well-built physique. His hair was short and even, as if it had just grown out. The lines of his lips was as clear and sharp as the edge of a knife. He had a high nose bridge, eyes bright with spirit, and eyebrows dark as ink. His limbs were long and lithe. The lines of muscles on his torso were clear and powerful, and his pectorals were sleek and well-formed. Droplets of black oil clung to his chest, smearing there when Akka had carried him. But they didn't detract from his perfect body. In fact, the black oil glistened with the colors of the rainbow, adding a layer of rough glamour. He reminded Akka of a heroic sculpture from ancient times with the kind of beauty that came from an abundance of manliness. What's your name?" Akka asked. "Name." The man furrowed his eyebrows slightly, as if he was thinking hard. Akka was about to stand up when the man moved again, startling Akka into backing away. He harbored many and varied suspicions toward this man, and he had a lot of questions too. Where had he come from? Why was the sleeping chamber that had held him built that way? Had he really slept at the bottom of the ocean for 3,000 years? Aka knew that if the sleeping cycle lasted for more than a month, a person's memories would slowly become sealed away due to the shutdown of the brain. So he was not surprised that this man showed signs of amnesia. "How did you save me?" the man asked, his voice still cold. "Well, you just woke up after being pulled out of the ocean." Aka described what had happened, but the man watched Aka with doubt in his eyes as he listened to his explanations. As Aka spoke, he thought to himself, This person has indeed lost his memories." 3,000 years, the man finally said. "Yes," Aka answered, while at the same time realizing a terrible issue. If he really had slept for that long, based on what Aka knew, his memories might never return to him. The man was deep in thought as he racked his brain, trying to recall anything. A little gleefully, Aka said, "But the technology of the sleeping chamber you were in is pretty good, because when you woke up, you still had the ability to speak and think." The man didn't say anything. "What are you called? At least think of a name." When the man didn't reply, Aka continued, "How about I temporarily give you a name? The chamber you were in had Heishi written on it. You're probably called Heishi, right?" "Heishi," the man mumbled. He didn't reject it, and his silence suggested that he accepted this name. Aka covered K with the oilcloth again before producing a piece of fabric, indicating that Heishi should put it on. Some pins turned it into a simple, full-body robe. As Heishi quietly sat on a rock, that one-piece sackcloth robe made him look like he was a statue. Having taken care of Heishi for the time being, Aka opened K's navigation system, once again listening to that string of words. Undoubtedly, the revolutionary broadcast of the clones was much more important than Heishi at this moment, though he almost didn't dare consider what would happen if the words were true. Would there be a riot? Aka could imagine it in his head, the clones rushing toward the central district, taking over the city of steel, and blowing up the energy storage. As soon as war broke out, he would easily be able to pick up a power source, escape to the bay, install it in K, and leave this place behind. Aka was both overjoyed and nervous. Thinking about the message sent adrenaline rushing through him. He decided to return home and see what would happen, but his mind was still filled with the imagery of robots malfunctioning. "I'm leaving," Aka said as he passed in front of Heishi. Heishi looked up, confused. In his eyes was a mixture of alarm and a little bit of helplessness. Aka's head once again began to hurt. What was he supposed to do with this amnesiac whom he had picked up like a piece of scrap? Take him along? He seemed to have some strength, and he could be useful, but he definitely couldn't be brought back to the living area. The consequences of being discovered by the robotic guards were unthinkable. "Where are you going?" Heishi asked. "It has nothing to do with you, stranger," Aka replied, disgruntled. "I saved your life, and you didn't even spare me a word of thanks." Heishi didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "Do you have food?" Aka was ready to explode from rage. "Don't you know how to find some yourself? It's not like I owe you anything." Heishi rose to his feet, and Aka immediately backed away. He pulled out an electronic wrench and brandished it at him. "Don't come at me, otherwise I'll fry you into ash." Frowning, Heishi looked around at his surroundings. "I've had it," Aka thought. "Saving this person has brought me nothing but trouble." He backed out of the cave. Still, for reasons he didn't understand, worry nagged at him, so he soon turned around and went back in. "Food and drinkable water are here." Aka opened the foodstuffs storage that he had squirreled away in a corner and pointed it out to Heishi. Heishi reached out a hand and grabbed a water bottle, taking a gulp before tilting his head back and chugging down the whole contents of the large bottle. It was only then that Aka realized he was very thirsty. "Hungry?" Aka asked as he opened a can and handed it over. Heishi hesitated for a moment before digging out a chunk of chicken meat with his fingers and pushing it into his mouth to chew. "Okay, I'm really going. You take care of yourself, all right? Find somewhere to go." The watch on his wrist began to beep, and Akka knew that he could drag it out no longer. He had already been gone for too long today. Running out of the cave, he returned via the path he'd taken to get here. Worries weighed heavily on Akka's heart, and he kept thinking of the announcement in the navigation system. What if this was all only a joke? Could it be a joke? The trip back took a whole half-hour, and when Akka arrived at the waste container, he happened to turn his head and instantly went bug-eyed. Heishi had followed him the whole way, zigzagging across the crude oil-covered beach. Don't come over here, Akka shouted anxiously. Heishi stood still, and Akka took a few running steps toward him. Don't go looking for trouble. The expression on Heishi's face remained cold and calm, and Akka's watch once again beeped in warning. There was no more time. Leave this place. Go anywhere else. Don't follow me, Akka said. With that, Akka scrambled head first into the garbage chute, and with his hands and legs moving in tandem, he started to climb up. He followed the path he had taken to get back to the living quarters. As he went, he shot a look down at the ground underneath the garbage chute. This time, he saw footprints, 2 lines of messy ones. That meant they were the footprints of a human. After he'd first exited the garbage chute, someone had come by and entered it. Also, after doing that, they hadn't left again. How could this have happened? Akka almost couldn't believe it. He wanted to go back and check for clues, but he had no time left, so he could only leave quickly with his heart in his throat. Now that he knew a human had found this exit, he could no longer use it as often. As he climbed up the ladder to the safety tunnel, Akka was nearly caught on camera. Getting on the next ladder, he thought, that was too close. I could have died right then. The laser-equipped surveillance camera turned to an empty spot, and Akka slowly went up, his back pressed against the wall as he peered out. Inside the living area, nothing was out of the ordinary. Several clones stood in the hallway chatting. Akka passed by them, returned to the sleeping hall, climbed into his sleeping chamber, and closed his eyes. His mind was still filled with overwhelming excitement for the coming riot, but his body had no more energy to fight off his exhaustion, and he eventually fell asleep. Suddenly, a huge roar echoed from the central reactor chamber, and the resulting explosion was like a blazing sun that dispersed its light over the entirety of the City of Steel. All the constructs, humans, clones, androids, were turned into ash in the high heat and bright light. The sleeping period has ended, an electronic voice announced, concluding sleep mode. The hatch to the chamber automatically opened, and Akka startled out of his dreams, forehead covered with sweat. Are you all right, Akka? One of the humans asked. Akka barely managed to nod, and his head spun as he used the wall of the chamber to prop himself up. His feet caught as he tried to stand, and he almost fell over before several people came over to lift him up. Did you have a nightmare? Someone asked in concern. Akka responded, Yeah, I did. He almost couldn't tell what had been dream and what had been reality. He now felt that everything that had happened over the past 6 hours was only a fantasy. People came and went, and Akka stood outside the sleeping area for a long while as he mulled his dream over again and again. Then the bell rang, reminding him that he had 2 hours to get ready. When those 2 hours were up, he would have to go to work. Akka went to the cafeteria to eat. A different group of people were present from the last time he'd eaten here. Just as he sat down with a myriad of things on his mind, a robot rolled over and said to him, Designation 470023A. Your guest is currently in the waiting room. Please arrive there within the next 5 minutes. A guest? Akka randomly shoveled a few bites of his breakfast into his mouth. When he went into the hallway, he saw 2 clones standing outside the door to the waiting room. All clones had the same face and the same physique, and they each wore the requisite uniform their duties required. But as soon as Akka saw this one, his heart began to hammer in his chest. You stole my navigation chip. The clone strode toward him. If you return it to me immediately, I'll forget about your past mistakes. What chip? Aka subconsciously reached a hand into his shirt pocket, but his hand closed around empty air, and he remembered that he had installed the chip in Kei's body and forgotten to bring it back. Another clone came over, snarling quietly at him. "Don't play dumb. You have no reason to keep that thing around. You'll only end up burdening all of the humans here with disposal." "You don't have the authority to do this," Aka responded angrily. In just a few seconds, he had cleared his mind, and he realized that this clone didn't dare to raise his voice, which meant the chip with the treacherous secret was real and not a dream. I didn't take your chip," he insisted, though he was so nervous he almost couldn't breathe. "You switched it out." That clone gritted his teeth and his hands spasmed, then grabbed Aka around the neck. "Where is it? Give it back." Aka's face flushed bright red, and he saw the surveillance cameras in the hallway turn toward their direction, but the clone's emotions were already out of control. His fingers squeezed Aka's throat until the cartilage of his airway made crunching sounds. Little by little, his vision went black. "Stop!" The clone's companion just barely stopped him from choking Aka to death. When the clone loosened his grip, Aka fell to his knees and gasped for air. Through coughs, he said again, "I didn't take the chip." "The guards are coming," another clone warned. "They've already spotted us. You can't keep talking with him any longer. Think of another way to get him away." "Just you wait," the clone said, his expression dark. The two clones left. Aka knew there was no getting out of it this time. He knelt in the hallway as he thought about his next move. It was too late now to go out and retrieve the chip, and even if he handed it over, it would be useless. Could he switch it for a new chip and hand that over? Maybe. Aka leaned against the wall for support, his mouth filled with the taste of blood. He then went to find water so he could gulp some down and wet his hair. Right as he started in that direction, the bell sounded a signal to gather. When it rang, all humans were to report to the conference hall as fast as possible. Damn, things were moving too fast and too suddenly. Aka knew that the clones had definitely alerted the robotic guards in this area, who then sent the signal to gather up all the humans. Perhaps they had given some false pretense to the guards to select some of the humans so that they could forcefully take him away. But he couldn't refuse to go. Aka entered the conference hall, which was packed with people. From all four sides came the roar of a crowd before the myriad of steel doors fell shut, trapping tens of thousands of people in this great room. A strong light turned on, so bright that the humans couldn't keep their eyes fully open. That burning white light shining out from the darkness struck fear into their hearts. Two robotic guards escorted a human to the center of the stage, and a clone appeared right afterward. Aka froze. The person on that stage was wearing a sackcloth robe, and he stood there with his feet bare and his hands bound in a pair of magnetic handcuffs. It was none other than Heishi, whom he had rescued from the ocean just a few hours earlier. The police found him in front of the access stairs that leads to the waste container, the clone announced to the gathered people. This human of unknown origin does not have a designation number nor a section that he belongs to. He knows nothing. In the process of resisting arrest, he killed 2 enforcers. According to the first law of the human control regulations, he should be put to death. Aka held his breath. But he told us that he came here with the goal of finding a human, and this human is among you right now, the clone said, evenly and placidly. If you are here, please step forward and explain the origins of this person. The crowd of people began to whisper, and Aka's heart nearly leapt out of his throat. He could hardly think. Didn't he tell Heishi not to follow him? What exactly was going on? A robotic guard's arm rotated around, revealing a magnetic slicer which hovered near Heishi's head. Heishi lifted his eyes to watch the buzzing blue magnetic slicer in front of his face. The hexagonal high-voltage beam sizzled and popped. All that was needed was one wave of an arm, and Heishi's head would be cut into 6 pieces. I'll give all of you 10 more seconds, the clone said. If the person he's colluding with doesn't step up, then this human will be disposed of, and we will begin to investigate the entire ant nest. Warning. Commencing with disposal procedure in 10, 9, 8. Heishi ignored that robotic guard, turning his gaze instead to stare at the group of people below the stage. His expression was standoffish, but his eyes were searching. The crowd began to quietly gasp in shock. This innocent man on the stage clearly didn't know that his headless corpse was about to fall to the ground. 6, 5, 4. Wait! Akka took a step forward. It was... He didn't even have the chance to lay claim to this stranger when Heishi whipped around. With one kick, he sent the guard flying before leaping toward Akka. The entirety of the hall exploded in chaos. Akka hadn't yet discovered his wits before Heishi landed in front of him. An unexpected incident, Akka finished. Streaks of light flew toward them, and Akka shouted, "Get down!" Akka pushed Heishi toward the ground as the interior of the hall darkened. A moment later, Heishi righted himself and lifted Akka by his collar. "Come with me," Heishi said. "We'll die," Akka protested. "Don't attack them head on." 2 flying guards came at them from the left and the right, and Heishi turned again on the spot, executing a beautiful roundhouse kick. The flying guards were swept aside, smashing into the wall with booming explosions. Akka was struck dumb. He had only seen this kind of skill once in his study materials. It was a kind of ancient martial art. Heishi! Akka was just about to tell him to surrender when the doors to the right opened. Robotic guards swarmed in, but Heishi charged forward instead of backing up, rushing into the tunnel that the mechanical guards had come from. The sirens wailed loudly, and Akka thought, "It's over. We're done for." Everything had happened so fast that he hadn't been able to react in time. "What is this place?" Heishi asked. Akka came to a quick decision. "Run toward the end of the tunnel." Grabbing Akka, Heishi rushed where he was told, and Akka shouted again, "Turn left." The 2 of them turned at a breakneck speed, slamming into the person around the corner. By now, the entire ant nest had been alerted by the sirens that were blaring from the main hall, and all the doors had been shut. Akka still held onto a thread of hope, however, that when they arrived at the living area, they could rush toward the garbage chute and escape that way. With how things had turned out, this was his only option. When Heishi stopped in his tracks, Akka felt a tug of worry. At the end of the tunnel, the front of the sole exit at the ant nest from the garbage chute, there was a clone. And behind the clone, there were 2 exterminators. "Don't attack. I mean it. No matter what, you must not attack." The humanoid exterminators were a type of android specially made to take down humans, and they had been outfitted with infrared tracking shotguns. If they pulled them out in the narrowness of this tunnel, Heishi and Akka's corpses would be on the ground in seconds. Heishi also instinctively sensed the danger, and he took a step back. But even more robotic guards had blocked the path behind them. Up front were the clone and the 2 exterminators, and behind was a whole troop of robotic guards carrying magnetic handcuffs. "Seems like you've caused quite a problem, brat." Akka couldn't help taking a step back too as he recognized that the clone was the one who had demanded the navigation chip from him. Unfortunately, his back pressed against the muzzle of a robotic guard's gun. "What exactly is going on?" another clone asked. Akka immediately turned around and said, "Wait, it's me. The person this stranger wants to find is me." 4 robotic guards came over, pinning Akka between them, before putting magnetic handcuffs on him and locking a laser headgear around his neck. Akka held his gaze to signal to Heishi that he shouldn't resist. Akka didn't say a word. Alrighty, you guys, that is the conclusion of Chapter 2. Hope you all enjoyed it. That is as far as I'm going today, yet again. But it's still very, very good thus far. I'm intrigued by this Heishi character, and him being a 3,000-year-old human, a sleeping human, whatever, in a chamber. Akka definitely has the patience of a 16-year-old, that's for sure. Because on the page where he was like, saving this human has brought me nothing but trouble. I'm like, sir, not much has really happened. Like, calm down. You decided to go into the tides that were going all crazy and everything. But after you got him out, ultimately nothing has really happened just yet. But anyway, so we have Akka, who's 16, and Heishi, who's about 20 or so. That's what is said in the book. So that's what we're going with. Anyway, I don't think I need to teach you how to pronounce Akka. That's pretty simple. Heishi. I'm not looking at the pinyin, just giving you the pronunciation, but hey, like hey, and sure. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this chapter. There will be another one tomorrow, unless I feel better again and can do two, but it's still a little bit too pressing on my chest, just talking a little too much. So I'm going to call it quits. I'm doing what I can, what I feel comfortable with. So you guys don't need to be like, oh, Mari, don't do it. Don't stress yourself out. I'm fine. Okay. I'm doing what I can and what I want to. So, yeah, as long as things keep progressing, I believe we'll be able to have the celebration on Friday. I'm really hoping that'll be the case and that we don't have to postpone it. But I'll keep you guys up to date. Unfortunately, it'll be a little late, if you will, but I'll let you all know how I feel by Thursday night. I'll put a post or like a quick video on YouTube. And of course, I'll put a post up in Patreon just so you guys know if we do need to postpone the celebration. Anyway, everyone's getting this video at the same time, just like you got the ending of River Bay Road and the first chapter of Astrolabe Rebirth. I'm just going ahead and giving you guys this video at the same time on Patreon and YouTube. It's going to be that way, at least for the remainder of this week and maybe even next week. I'll see. Since Patreon is getting some exclusive content, maybe I'll release this at the same time every day for you all. And who knows, maybe I'll even keep it at just a chapter a day. I mean, it's 19 chapters, so that would be 19 days. Aside from when we do a live reading session, then that would be like 2 or 3 chapters in that day. But anyway, I'm just talking my thoughts out. You all have an excellent day. Well, I ain't even.